thank you for your patience with Margaret. It's a very important work to do, meeting her literary fans over there at the table. And thank you so much for coming along this evening. We're gathered here tonight to celebrate the publication of our house, Delirious, by a richly talented daughter of Cahir, Margaret Galvin. Now, as chairperson of Cahir Social and Historical Society, I'm delighted to be master of ceremonies tonight because we have worked with Margaret many times over the last decade. Most recently, most notably, we hosted the launch of our last collection, The Finer Points, at this very venue about 5 years ago, sorry, 2019, the winter of 2019. In February 2020, just weeks before the arrival of you-know-what, with the sure-footed support of Margaret, the Society remembered Mary Sunderland and Paddy Kelly, two victims of a local tragedy 60 years before. And thanks to Margaret's help, we remembered that tragedy with she gave us great guidance on that particular event, and she had great feeling for that event and that tragedy. And we unveiled a plaque at Bridge Street, and the brass band played memorably. Paddy Kelly was a member of that band, and we must remember that occasion and the families involved again tonight. Since this event, we've been thrilled by the richly deserved recognition Margaret's writing has been given by RT Radio 1's Sunday Messiah. Coming back to tonight's event, it will be a mix of Margaret reading from her work and songs from the Eight Sisters, Michael Duggan, and Mary Howlett, a friend of long-standing and another writer and artist. Before we start into the reading and singing, I would like to invite Mr. Dominic Taylor, the publisher from Revival Press in Limerick, to say a few words with me. So Dominic, if you could come and join us, please.
On behalf of myself, Dominic Taylor, and Revival Press, the poetry imprint of the Limerick Writers Centre, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for joining us tonight to celebrate the release of Our House, Delirious, the latest poetry and prose collection by Margaret Galvin. Margaret's book represents the 148th publication since we started our community publishing project in 2009. Throughout the years, our publishing endeavours have embraced various genres, including poetry, short stories, memoir, history, and novels. Our main objective has always been to publish and promote writing within our community. As a community press, we strive to offer writers and poets the opportunity to see their work in print. We actively encourage writers of all kinds, from those pursuing a serious career, to those who write for personal enjoyment, healing, growth, insight, or just to inform. Margaret Galvin's new work encompasses beauty, insight, and music. And having read her writing, I can attest to her genuine connection with the roots and soil of her community. This is a value we strongly uphold at the Limerick Writers Centre and Revival Press. We firmly believe that writers like Margaret deserve to witness the fruit of their efforts through the publication of their books. Despite predictions of the demise of the printed book, bookshops continue to sell them, libraries still stock them, and publishers continue to bring them into the world. Books remain a powerful means of dialogue and communication between individuals and communities. And even though book technology may be old, it remains cutting edge. During our book launches, I often share a quote from the Chilean Nobel Prize-winning poet Pablo Neruda, who said, "Poetry is like bread, it should be shared by all, by the vast, incredible, extraordinary family of humanity." Neruda took poetry off the shelves of the wealthy and returned it to the people. much like what we are doing here tonight by sharing Margaret Galvin's poetry and her prose with family and friends. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dominic, very much for your kind words. So this is, I suppose at this stage, I'd just like to ask Margaret a few words. On the back of our house, Delirious, Melanie Scott, the arts, she's a wonderful arts officer, county arts officer for Tipperary. She's, and she has been worked with Margaret on a project a couple of years ago during COVID, around, what was it, around it was around the bend.
Melanie on two projects, and during COVID we brought out this. Many of you have featured in it, and it's a great pleasure to do this, to map writing in Tipperary. So as I say, it's a COVID project, and we have 48 writers from North and South Tipperary, and I have absolutely no doubt that that's the beginning of many collections from a number of people working here. And it's Melanie, who is a great officer. She's spoken of very warmly wherever I go, and I can personally attest to this, which is really important to me, that she has as much interest in promoting the work of a man known to me who's newly literate in his 50s, as she does the person with a PhD. So there's community arts, you know, like going down this project as well, community arts is also when it has those kind of
Well, Melanie, back in the book, she gives this, she makes this comment, and her comment is, through her writing, Margaret Galvin gives voice to our place and its people. Her contribution to writing in her native South Tipperary is immense. And following on from Melanie's comments there, I said I'd ask Margaret a few questions. Some of them, she has an idea of what's coming, some of them she's not that well prepared for. So the first thing, Margaret, could you tell us a little about your early life?
Okay. I grew up in Kilcommon, in a cottage, attached to the Colonel Charge's estate. My father was a labourer on the estate. My next door neighbour was a dairymaid. My godfather was a shepherd, so I come straight out of Thomas Hardy, believe me. It was a bit before my time, because the park would have been breaking up and Anti-Mission would have been coming in. I was born in 1959. But I heard enough stories of misery and courage and hope and pain to keep me writing for as long as I'm drawing breath, I guess.
And is that what made you a writer, or can you?
I tell you now what made me a writer. It was the original big ears, big eyes. I grew up with enormous privilege. I grew up in a house with no television until I was 15, no water, I was 12, and no books. Now, believe me, I've made a life out of books. I'm not recommending that any of you with children or grandchildren suddenly cut off the life supply of books, but it was completely uncluttered, right? And consequently, and because I was the youngest by a huge number of years and our family had been drained by immigration, I was very often in adult company, right? So I was listening to all these stories that people were telling, and I was intruding. So much more was going on under the story. You know, we had a clock, for instance, and other people out there did not have a clock, right? So, you know, Dick Graham would come to the door, you know, and he wouldn't ask her, how is she ticking? You know, and it just struck me, you know, you could live your life without a clock, you know, it was wonderful. And I'm no Pollyanna. I don't romanticize poverty, I can assure you, and dragging buckets of water up from the well. But it really was fabulous early life. And I just find again and again and again when I go back to writing, it's those characters. And I had some huge privilege as well, spending a lot of my childhood in pubs. I'm so lucky that somebody saw the sense of bringing me into the Ryan's, into the snug in the Galaxy Inn, and I'd say every social worker in Tusla would probably be after me now. People like me who work in social care, but have all kinds of reports, right, left and centre. But I was brought into that company. So I was privy to concerts down in Ned Ryan's, that was in Carnegie Hall. I was privy to the private conversations of women in the snug of the Gowty Inn, where my mother would go, she'd often meet up with my uncle, my uncle's wife, from Clonmore, Peg Coughlin, and I'd often see a few bob passing between them, you know, half crowned with a big horse on it. And, you know, I did wonder what was going on.
No, thank you very much for that. That's a fantastic answer. As a teacher, I suppose I'm a little bit interested in, you know, you talk a little, this is brand new, I'm throwing this at you right now. You mentioned when your photograph was taken on the front of the Irish press with your
My pet
name, and the teacher in your school saw it first and sent a photograph down to your mum and dad with the influence in the older class. Where, firstly, was that in Gary Clonmore?
I didn't go to Gary Clonmore.
Okay.
I always went to Cahir. All my siblings went to Gary Clonmore.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I suppose the next thing you also talk about in the book about the difference being going to school after Donald O'Malley's reforms in the late 60s. And did any teacher or did any, you know, again change your mind or you know, again have a major influence on you?
There was lots of really good, and you know, I was so pleased to see Patsy McGurk coming in, and I remember her teaching us geography with great vigour and vim. Mrs. O'Dwyer, she was fabulous, and look at, you'll have to shoot her, she's hale and hearty and got those body. Giant would eat custard, but she knew we'd understand, you know, and custard by the bucketful. And I do. She was full of theatre. Yeah, she was, and she's found her way kind of a bit disguised at times into some of my Miscellany pieces because I really remember her elegance as well, you know.
And in secondary school, was there any teacher, in English?
I did. I loved English for sure. But it's interesting. When I did get a chance to study, it wasn't literature I wanted to study. I wanted to study sociology. You know, and even as an adult, you know, really I'm a great believer in lifelong learning. It's fabulous to see the regional colleges and the ITs, you know, universities, and you know, went back in my 50s to do some more because as a, you know, I really need to understand what's at work here. But there were, for sure. I had a very, well, I regard as a nice piece myself on the ceremony, the last one, on the First Communion dress. And I mentioned very affectionately Sister Cecilia Beecher, you know, she was a gorgeous character. And she prepared us for First Communion, and my memory of her, hymns, you know, and, you know, in death's dread moments, 7-year-old children was pretty waiting, you know.
No, thank you. Sorry, that was just curiosity. I had to ask you that. Why is so much of your writing memory-based?
Well, Flannery O'Brien, I call no greater a witness than other writers believes, and I subscribe to it. There's not enough has happened to you by the time you're 8 to have material for a lifetime. And I guess the variety of beliefs of my own circumstances, all that I was listening to and all that I understood and intuited, is certainly feeding again and again and again into what I'm doing. And I guess too, I would echo another American poet who says that it's actually one of the functions of writing, one of the businesses of writing, is to keep alive the memory of the people, places, and events that have shaped us. You know, and I know the society is changing so radically, and I know Cahir, along with Fermoy, as I understand it, has, you know, the largest population of foreign nationals, and I really want to compliment you in the town. There's no one roaring or shouting or on the news or doing anything, so it must be, you know, a really good integrated situation, and will feed into loads and loads more writing to come. But it is very important to lose sight of who you were. We're in really big trouble.
And I suppose another question that followed after that is,
What inspires you?
I guess I get enormous pleasure. Nobody gets anything nicer to me or better to me than you're trying to tell me this for a good one. right? And they tell you some out story that seems to be really inconsequential, but when you kind of tease it out, all of human survival is in it, you know. Maybe it would be useful to just give you an example. The next piece of work I will be working on has come here from Cahir. And you're asking what inspires me, and I came into possession of a pane of glass, courtesy of a lady called Emily Barron from his mother house, who I didn't know, who went to an enormous trouble to find me down in Wexford. And she grew up in this huge big mansion in Kilmoyler. And on the window of her bedroom was scratched in beautiful copperplate handwriting, I mark you, John Galvin, Cahir, painter, 31st of May, 1890. And I didn't think it was any relation of mine, but Annette Condon, my very good friend and somebody who helps me enormously, did a load of genealogical research and was able to establish that John Galvin was actually my grandfather's cousin. So what interests me and inspires me hugely about that, and I do hope to write about it very soon, is you have this nobody, you know, this poor man on the mountain road, going out to this mansion, maybe on a lad bike, maybe on an asset cart. He was patron decorator, and he had such self-possession, such pride in his work and in himself, that he did that enormous gesture of self-possession. So I guess gestures of self-possession greatly inspire me. Yeah.
And finally then,
Is there any advice you have for anyone wanting to write?
Yeah, there's a number of people come in tonight and they say, you know, I write a bit, or, yeah, one young man said, this is the first time I ever wrote a poetry collection, and that was, you know, really, really did cheer me. Okay, you must read, obviously. I facilitate quite a number of writing workshops, and you wouldn't believe the number of people who want to write, who don't want to read for some reason, you know. And our libraries, it's hallmark of civilized society, the state of our libraries, and they're quite wonderful. So reading, developing a writing practice, carrying your little notebook, as I don't care if the mobile phone will cook dinner for you. People say, oh no, I just put it into my phone. No, you've got to take out your little notebook, you've got to have the muscle memory of recording something. So you have to dream it, and you have to work real hard to make it happen, and you have to have faith in it. And you have to believe, which is absolutely 100% true, that only you can put that story out there. And that's some pleasure, it is some privilege, and it is some responsibility.
Thank you so much, Margaret, for answering those questions that I'm going to ask. Finish by asking two parochial care focused questions. Firstly, are you a townie or are you country?
Outskirts, but no, I was far more coachy, you know. And then there's a number of people here from Carrigain, the first local authority houses that developed there, you know, and that was urban. This was the times the era changed, and Bob Dylan would tell us, you know. And no, we were country. We were the well. We were the tap down the road, you know. Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed again, I think. It's a term that crops up a couple of times in the collection, is Kilcommon Hill. I've never heard of Kilcommon Hill.
Oh, Kilcommon Hill.
No one talks about it.
You would have reported you can hate it all the years ago pushing the bicycle, or my parents pushing the bicycle. It is the hill, Murnans were on the house on the hill overlooking the golf club, and then there was Billy Morrison's big farm where you went to make a phone call and saw a carpet and a chandelier and wondered, oh Jesus, you know, can life get any better than this? So it's that hill near Marshallstown where Murnans is, and quite an old chuck up the hill, I'll tell you.
and you've answered all my questions.
Okay,
7 out of 7.
Yeah. Before we go, I'm going to say this is ex-couple, but I really just have to say all of this. Look, I am out of this town over 40 years, 45 years. I live 100 miles away. You know, I have my dear cousin here, but very few other relations. I cannot make an event like this happen. I can't conjure you up, you know, and so many people don't know me. So, you know, were it not for Annette Condon, Josephine O'Neill, Mary O'Donnell, and I I know you won't mind me isolating Annette because she mounted a media campaign that I tell you I'd be very afraid if she ever goes on to Donald Trump's team because, you know, nothing will beat him. I am not media savvy, I'm not proud of it, but as I say, I don't know a Twitter handle from a handle of a shovel, but Annette does, and she was putting up all these posts on social media for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, you know, I really feel so privileged, so lucky, enormously grateful, and good on you, you know. Bravo. And also to say, with regard to Dominic, thank you so much for this handsome creature. You know, what's between the covers is the best I can make it. But by God, did you score a big one with that cover yourself and the artist, Dottie Bender. You know. See such a hugely produced book from a community publishing house. And just echoing on what you were saying about advice to readers, one of the great places you can start is go into the Limerick Writers Centre, go into the section that says shop, you'll find 148 titles there, and start reading them. You know, my colleague A.M. Cousins, fellow writer from Wexford here, our book is on it, and Ron Carey, several others were just great places to start reading. And thank you, Dominic. The first thing we're going to this evening, one of the really important figures and the person I hold in such high regard is our postman Jim Haid, and it's just fabulous that so many members of Jim Haid's family are here tonight. And like a lot of people, we survived on the generosity of our maiden aunts. We're all immigrants, and they used to send us clothes on a weekly basis. And you were talking about the comment here. Poor old Jim puffing and puffing against wind and rain, and you know, every element that was thrown at him would bring these parcels to us. He would find a bit of time to, you know, wait in the kitchen to look at what they contained, and believe me, it was a parcel of sawdust. Jim would encourage you by saying she wasn't a grand and you could put a button in it, and you know. So when we talked about this in preparation, and Mary O'Donnell said, "Well, the Haid sisters." And every time I said that, I was been talking about the Haid sisters down in Wexford for a long time. Kind of Cahir's answer to the Spice Girls. They're also going to sing, you know. And one of Jim's daughters is going to read the essay called Parcels from London, and they're going to follow it with an appropriate song. So that's such a joy.
Next, she's going to be joined by her sisters Adele and Louise for a couple of wonderful songs.
Parcels from London. My parents reminded me constantly that were it not for the kindness of the aunts in London, I wouldn't have shoes on my feet or a stitch on my back. The kindness of my immigrant aunts, women who had left as children and never married, was expressed in the weekly delivery of a parcel of clothing furnished for us in London jumble sales. These women worked long hours in the kitchen of a gentleman's club, the Athenaeum in Pall Mall, a location so different from the little cottage where they grew up in Clonmore, just outside Cahir, County Tipperary. Much of their scarce free time was devoted to tracking down the whereabouts of the best jumble sales in London. They'd keep a sharp eye out for signs advertising such sales as they travelled by bus to and from their council flats. The information about time and place would be recorded in little notebooks, kept in their handbags for that purpose. They always maintained the church jumble sales were the best, noting that posh people with quality clothing donated to those charity efforts. The aunts crammed a great array of eclectic clothing and footwear into corrugated brown paper, secured many times with duct tape and string. I can picture them queuing up in the post offices in Camberwell or Vauxhall, handing over the booty to some other immigrant figure behind the counter, a clerk who would sometimes suggest that they remove small items to greatly reduce the postage cost. Our postman, Jim Hage, was another collaborator in the process of ensuring that we were suited and booted. He laboured up Kilcommon Hill in all weathers to deliver the parcels, something he need not have done. He'd be fully in his rights to tell us the goods were at the post office for collection, my father remarked, adding that Jim was obliging us. This kindly postman was our haute couture accomplice, our catwalk commentator, as he sat by the fire with his mug of tea. He rested in our kitchen with the rain dripping from his cape and peak to cap, hoping that the parcels contained something to turn us into smashers. We fell upon the bounty, wrestled with the wrinkled brown paper, tugged the blunt scissors through the thick tape, and hacked at the twine my aunts had knotted many times around the parcels. A jumble of clothing spilled from the thick brown paper onto the kitchen table, still littered with porridge bowls and mugs. We rifled through the diverse assortment. We crammed our feet into shoes that were too small, with the determined hope of the ugly sisters, ignoring the pinch and bite, telling ourselves it was nothing that couldn't be cured. We'll stuff the toes with newspaper and they'll stretch. We'll soften the leather with Vaseline. We won't be bested. A suit for my father was often enclosed. A suit befitting a clergyman of the Anglican tradition. A cast-off with a genteel ecclesiastical air. My father would be summoned from his bed to join us in the kitchen and try on the suit over his long johns and saggy nighttime vest. Flannel or herringbone tweed would be arranged over his night attire. My mother and the postman would stand back to evaluate the fit, recommended to tug here and there as they transformed my father into a London top. A paisley scarf with tassels was often retrieved from the pile and draped around his neck, something jaunty to brighten up the solemnity of the cloth. A trilby hat, complete with band and bow, was perched on his head. The ensemble complete, he'd be led to the mirror and pronounced ready for Piccadilly. My mother was always on the lookout for a swing coat with a fitted bodice and a nice full skirt, something elegant but comfortable and practical too, for cycling the bicycle into town for the daily messages. I remember the wistful way she twirled in front of the mottled glass of the mirror when such a coat did arrive, a navy swing coat, maybe first worn by some rector's wife who thought it a wise investment to shell out for the fully lined and durable. As for me, I rifled through the tangles looking for bell-bottom trousers and turtlenecks, cast off by some English girl who was moving on to a preference for pencil skirts or tea dresses, now her mother was elected to the select vestry. Thanks to the generosity of the aunts and the collaboration of our postman, we also had the best dressed scarecrows in the parish. One sported a mulberry jacket with black trim, and his elegant lady friend was decked out in a big yellow sun hat. A cardigan sprigged with flowers lightly draped around her wooden shoulders. They made an unlikely couple there amongst our cabbages and onions, flaunting their London finery.
Adele, Maria, and Louise now are going to sing. The Eight Sisters are going to sing Those Were the Days. And they're accompanied by Mary Howes on guitar.
Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end.
Here tonight to sing that song and for Maria, the daughter of Jim Hayes, to read that poem based, in which her dad features. It's just so that's the richness of the evening. So again, a round of applause, please, for the Hayes sisters. We're going to be back again for another song in a few minutes. Next, Margaret is going to talk about Ned Ryan's pub, and she's going to read excerpts from two poems. Johnny Boyle's Lessons and the Turkey Cluckers concert, exactly. And then Michael Duggan, who's a singer of great local renown. Michael sang here for the launch of Finer Points 4 years ago, so it's great to have him. He's going to sing, well, you'll all know the song he's going to sing, The Wild Colonial Boy, so he's going to sing that later on. So I'm going to hand you over to Margaret now.
Well, Ned Ryan's, as I say, was where I learned a huge amount about how to be a human being, how to survive. And on page 82, there's an essay, a Christmas essay. It's called The Turkey Cluckers Concert. And every December, I'm going to be a group of men. There's Christy Parton from Kilcommon. Christy used to sing The Wild Colonial Boy, and my father used to recite maybe Down the Groom, or Cremation of Sam McGee, or Green Eye, Little Yellow God. And it was absolutely fabulous. I'm just going to read just a short piece from that. It was generally agreed that my father could have been anything if he'd had a bit of education. I often wonder at the grinding frustration and disappointment felt by men and women of this generation, poor people, denied the opportunity to develop their innate and evident giftedness. To explain away some surprising ability or information, my father often remarked with self-deprecating humility, but not a little pride, I never went to school and I met the scholars on the home. His talent found expression in simple ways as he flourished shopping lists in the most exquisite copperplate. The grocer often remarked his striking handwriting as he served us our quarter of tea or a pan loaf. It was, however, after a few rare pints in December in Ned Ryan's pub in Rich Street, Cahir, my father came into his power when, persuaded centre stage, he proclaimed a recitation for the company. This visit to the pub was my father and his companions was funded by their weeks of work as turkey pluckers. Choked with the thirst after long hours in the plucking sheds, they sought respite from the pulling and tugging of tail and wing feathers, the singeing of pin feathers, the constant vigilance to avoid tearing the bird or torching the skin. Flush with a few shillings from this seasonal work, he'd swing me from the bar of his bicycle for a lemonade and potato crisps and company of old men. I often think how privileged I was as a child to be included in the company. My older siblings had all emigrated, and I, the youngest by more than a decade, was as much my parents' companion as their child. Those evenings, Ned Ryan's pub might as well have been Carnegie Hall for those assembled. The men would sing a couple of quick pints of porter before the entertainment began. And first up, Christy Perkle, his rampant head of current swaying to the rhythms of the wild colonial boy, as eyes closed he recounted the wild goings-on of the doughty Jack Duggan. This picaresque character proved to be the terror of Australia. And another short piece just to locate Ned Ryan's important, very important, sage hairdressing now. You were talking about early influences, you know. One of the biggest and most powerful influences that I had on my life that persuaded me that what was actually going on at school was actually worth learning was this drunken roadman called Johnny Boyle, who used to come in to us every 3-4 times a week for sober novel, and he had an extraordinary interest in my schoolwork. And I was damn sure that I wasn't going to be elite. I was going to know how to read those words to impress Johnny Boyle. So I really do feel very grateful to him for the encouragement. When Johnny Boyle, the roadman, was in the horrors from drink, he'd come to my mother for sobering up with mugs of sweet black tea. Johnny would jauntily describe his drinking bout as a spree, but we knew it was his attempt to delay his return to a lonely cottage after a day's work scraping the roads for the county council. Only a gang of stray cats, all generically named Bucko, waited for him at his front door, spitting and growling their hunger for haphazard scraps. He drank mainly in Ned Ryan's pub in Bridge Street, where Ned's sisters, Sis and Kate, kept a formidable bottle of holy water under the counter to sprinkle on drunken customers as they staggered from the premises. An extra dousing was flicked in Johnny's direction because he was an apostate, one of the very few who vigorously declared his agnosticism in that era. As he loudly proclaimed himself, he never darkened the door of church, chapel, nor meeting house. Normally benign towards those he did, he was occasionally known to declare that it was all a racket from the Pope town. So, as I say, the wild colonial boy was music to the ears for many years for me, and it's a great pleasure. He was such a great friend of the community here. He's involved in all kinds. He's been at any groups, you know, both my own and other launches as well, and he sings such heart and soul. And he was on to me last night and he said, I'm getting a bit nervous, and I said, you're my Pavarotti.
I said she was delirious. It's a great privilege to be asked to speak. There was a wild colonial boy, Jack Duggan was his name. He was born and raised in Ireland, in a place called Castlemaine. He was his father's only son, his mother's pride and joy, and dearly did his parents love the wild colonial boy. At the early age of 18 years, he left his native home, and to Australia's sunny shore he was inclined to roam. He robbed the rich to help the poor. He shot Judge McAvoy. A terror to Australia was the wild colonial boy. One morning on the prairie, as Jack he rode along, listening to the mockingbird singing a cheerful sun. Over Tree Mountain, Trumpers, Kelly Davis and Fitzroy, they all set out to capture him, the wild colonial boy. Surrender now, Jack Duggan, for you see we're 3 to 1. Surrender in the Queen's high name, you are a plundering son. Jack drew 2 pistols from his belt and proudly waved them high. I'll fight but not surrender, said the wild colonial boy. He fired a shot at Kelly, which falls into the ground, and turning round to Davis, he received a mortal wound. A bullet pierced his proud young heart from pistol of Fitzroy, and that was how they captured him, the wild colonial boy.
I don't know where my MC has gone, but look, it's where we proceed. Somebody has just handed me a note that is, well, my husband has, which pleases me enormously to say that Christy's psalm is here. So, no, it's John or Patrick, but, you know, the Wild Colonial Boy was your dad's song, and I listened to it with great delight. I'm going to read a tiny bit of a story, an essay called The Magic Box, which refers to the wireless. And weren't the wireless fabulous? You know, they were mahogany, beautiful objects, and freshwork, floating freshwork. And I think if there was any moment at which I might have got an idea that I might have written, it was as a very small child, about 5 or 6, in bed on Saturday morning. It was a children's programme on the wireless, children's music, on 3 songs. There was Laughing Postman, there was Tommy Steen and Little White Bull, and who doesn't cheer on Little White Bull, and there was this wonderful song called Magic Dragon. Now, I used to listen to that and play it every morning, and it lodged in me. Wouldn't it be a fabulous thing to write something? I've never written a song, I have no skill whatsoever, but to write something that actually lodged in someone's heart. Wouldn't that be, you know, a really good way, good account to bringing yourself to the pearly gates? And I often say I have 2 requests of my husband. I'm in no hurry to drop dead, but I say if I do, there's 2 things to be done. One, costume needs to be summoned. Our fabulous undertaker here. I will not allow foreign bodies to go near me when I'm down in Wexford and I'm in no position to defend myself. And of the Magic Dragon is to be played everywhere. Right down there, you know, what the priests or minister objects. So this is on page 6, and I'll just read the first 2 paragraphs. When I tell people that I grew up in a house, no books, no television until I was 15, little access to newspapers, none at all to theatre or travel, they look at me with amazement, flinching from the barrenness of a life bereft of cultural enrichment. And I tell them that upbringing was the richest imaginable, no chance to disbelieve. I suffered no deprivation of imagination or intellect as I was growing up, thanks largely to the wireless. Saturday mornings brought the enchantment of Peter, Paul and Mary, breaking my child heart with the song of the Magic Dragon. The lyrics filled my uncluttered imagination with wondrous images of Puff and his little companion Jackie Paper. The pair took me with them as they travelled on a boat with billowed sail, winning hearts from noble kings and princes and the respect of pirates. This song is so embedded in my heart that it's on the playlist for any who would write or wants to see me out of town. So, if you heard the opportunity, I got now, Wally is there. And I know the girls with my to sing that. And, you know, it was in the era where maybe a set of saucepans or a set of, you know, sheets that matched, or kitchen scales or something. It was a luxury object. And yeah, all about that. And I'm introducing it by introducing Bridie Gallagher, a fabulous Donegal singer from Creeslaw, a girl from Donegal. Anyway, the poem is on 58. My mother hoped for the best. My mother would pause in her sweeping and lean on the brush to listen when Bridie Gallagher's voice thrilled her wireless. Her sentimental lilt filling the kitchen with moonlight in Mayo. My mother sang along with the same musing air I noticed when twice a year she took the good tea set from the dresser, bone china, white, rimmed with red roses to be washed in suds, 30 pieces, all intact, something entire and unbroken in her unlikely possession, tableware preserved for some elusive best occasion. She was all set for some vague, beyond the horizon possibility of a visitor, a capable hostess, ready to entertain that same exotic someone who'd sleep between the new cotton sheets stored in the trunk of the loft with Oxford blankets, saved for endless books of green shoe stamps, her epic commitment to thrift. We too must hope for this best time when someone connected to us would pass triumphant and grand through our door. Someone we couldn't expect to drink from a mug or huddle for meat under a pile of old coats in the bed. So, in a way, I've heard people say, wasn't it terrible that they stored all this stuff in the trunk of the loft? But I always argue that that was their hope, you know, that, and you know, say, somebody might come, you know, waiting for Godot, and this person was going to be, you know, quite grand and connected to us, and we'd have cups, and we wouldn't be found wanting, you know. So I know that Michael is going to echo the kind of sentimentality that surrounded that kind of wishing with the Bridie Gallagher song.
It's just a year ago today I left home here inside. My heart was throbbing in the soft light of my calling smile. In all my dreams I seem to hear her song by song and low. I know she's waiting where we said goodbye in old Bengal. For two Irish eyes are shining, and an Irish heart is pining. When I kissed her hands, caressed her in the gloaming long ago. Loving Irish arms will press me, and true Irish love caress me, and sweet Irish lips will bless me when it's moonlight in Mayo. Her Irish eyes like beacons shine all through the darkest night. I know her sweet love beam will always fill the world with light. The roses of her cheeks will lead enchantment to the sea. And when the shamrock wears the dew, I'll spread my sweet colleen. For two Irish eyes are shining, and an Irish heart is pining. When I kissed her and caressed her in the gloaming long ago, loving Irish arms will press me, And to Irish love caress me, and sweet Irish lips will bless me, when it's moonlight in Mayo.
I just want to change the mood a bit. It's a point that's very important to me because I think it makes a statement that's very important for me to make, and that is around the custom in our day of children, 13, 14-year-olds going off to become nuns, to join the Christian Brothers and the like. And some of them fared very well. Lizzie Ryan's nieces out in Kilcommon was Alice Mary. She was orphaned by TB. She went off as a 12-year-old child with nuns to Guatemala. She was home once in my memory, and she was saying that the teacher said to her, "There's a chance for you to get out." And she took that chance, and it seems to have worked very well for her. Others took that chance, and it didn't work. And it's a person I know who has told me all these stories about what happened to him and the anger that he felt when his voice was silenced around singing a particular song. The song was Mary of Argyll, and it was made famous by Kansas City McEwen. So it wasn't as if the poor child wanted to sing a Spice Girl number or something, but it was rather brutal repercussions. And Michael is going to sing it tonight, and in a way he's singing it as an act of reclamation for the voices of all people who were silenced in whatever circumstances. And it's called You and Bonnie Mary, and I do have the man's permission to talk about this. According to the vocations director, you were 13, healthy as a trout, sound as a bell, a cheery summary to describe an ideal postulant for the Christian Brothers. Chummy tones hoped that your parents were in the pink and proud as a punch. The booklet enclosed instructed you in rehearsed replies to silence your mother or any other objector who might question if you were a bit young to renounce the word, flesh, and the devil knows what mixed bag of a life you might have chanced. Mothers especially had to be gagged, crazed creatures who compete with God, sob at railway stations, remind you of random things on the platform. The table broke both your wrists, and she brought you to the bone setter's clinic in the back room of the pub. How the bone setter wound gauze around the wrists you held out, obedient and deferential, as you kept mum despite the pain. On her first once-a-year visit to the novitiate, she found you swamped in a man's overalls, painting sheds, telling her you got on well with everyone, but fearful of the dangers, had no particular friends. Used the whip as you'd been instructed on your little boy's back to mortify yourself for God. It was hell to pay when the novice master found the words of Mary of Argyll in a letter from home, a song your mother thought perfect for your boy's soprano voice, something to add to your repertoire when summons to entertain visitors in the parlour. You'd be one to watch closely at night, a torch piercing your sleep, to investigate if in your cell you observed holy purity, you with wistful notions about some girl's artless smile, a whimsical idea about singing in your dreams to your phantom, Bonnie Mary of Argyll, you and mother could see fit to supply your words. So I'm very pleased that Michael will reclaim that man's voice tonight.
I have heard the neighbors sing his love song to the moon. I have seen the dewdrop clinging to the rose just newly born. But a sweeter song has cheered me at the evening's gentle close. and I've seen an eye still brighter than the dewdrop on the rose. 'Twas thy voice, my gentle Mary, and thine artless winning smile that made this world a beacon. Holy Mary of Argyle. Though thy voice may lose its sweetness, and thine eye its brightness too, though thy step may lack its fleetness, and thy hair its sunny hue, still to me wilt thou be dearer than all the world shall own. I have loved thee for thy beauty, but now for that alone. I have watched thy heart, dear Mary, and its goodness was the fire that has made thee mine forever. Holy Mary of Argyle.
I know that Michael went to enormous trouble to learn that and to get all those lovely little grace notes and all the rest of it. So on behalf of the whole lot of you, thank you. Yeah. Okay, another short extract, a family story. My uncle Mick Galvin, in a little cottage in Rail Ballinooby, which to my immense pride and pleasure is still referred to as Galvin's cottage. Though Galvin's went on to say it's gone. And he was a gentle, self-effacing man, but he took great pleasure in carnivals and circuses were so important to us, weren't they, back in the day? And the piece is on page 27. It's called The Harm of the Year Go With It. And my friend Mary Holly is going to follow with the song about the carnival and its importance in our lives. My uncle Mick, the most gentle and inoffensive of men, took a great and surprising delight in fairs and carnivals. He'd often follow the carnival's itinerary, cycling into bordering counties to Liechtenstein or Ireland to sample the excitement of a different festive place. He liked the romance of the vagabond and transitory crew who'd pitch up for a few nights at the edge of the village. I remember him talking about the roustabouts, wondering at the picaresque and wild way they lived, setting up somewhere, fixing up the chairplanes and dodges, then trundling off again in a procession of dilapidated colourful rides. Strong men intrigued him too, how they'd break a skillet pan apart with their bare hands. Once he won the guess the weight of the pig competition and brought cigarettes for my mother for the winnings. He knew, however, not to fall for whatever famous fortune teller was there by special arrangement, and to ignore the matchmaker above Flynn who'd nudge him towards some shady lady in a flowery frock and sandals. So you have to read on to find out what happened to Roll when he lost the huge sum of 10 bob on this rigged up game, So the carnival was a great place, but you'd have to hold on to your hat with these riding people that they were, Mary, that you're going to sing about.
This song, it's recorded by the Seekers, so if you know it much, just join us. Say goodbye, my own lover, as we sing a lover's song. How it breaks my heart to leave you, now the carnival is gone. High above
smart arse people are saying in our house, hilarious, and it's all of those things, you know. But you'll find the explanation on page 88, and it's a poem of the same title, and it's dedicated to the memory of wonderful Brendan Boyer, singer 1939 to 2020. And few people who weren't around in my era can have any concept of how important those showmen were. Brendan Boyer's Dickie Rockets, especially the Joe Dolan, I think he really brought it up at another notch. I really much more on him. And this poem was published in a Christmas compendium that the News and Star bring out in Waterford, and somebody sent it to Brendan Boyer's family in Las Vegas, and I have a really nice letter from his daughter Clodagh. So that was a huge endorsement. I was a bit of trepidation when I opened the envelope. What are you saying about my father? But they were delighted, and I'm delighted to remember him. And the story tells of how a record player was brought into our house by one of my brothers. And we were seized. It was like a moment at dancing at Lunasa, when those poor women up at Donegal, destitute, the pin in their collar, this wonderful rousing Irish music come on the wireless, and they're seized. They become like dervishes, you know, and we were dervishes. Our house Delirious. Hucklebuck mania seized us that Christmas, and my brother hauled the record player from London, lugged it in a suitcase on the boat train from Paddington, on the ferry from Fishguard, from Rosslare on the bus. We watched as the stylus released the music stored in those black vinyl discs, and wiped as Brendan Boyer's perfect diction trembled to the hiss and crackle of the dance party machine, exhorting us to never lose our hucklebuck shoes. The turntable hopped as we boogied and bopped to delirium on the squeaking floor, lying in the kitchen. Las Vegas glittered through the mop and must of my father's shaving mirror. I sang into a hairbrush microphone. My mother lassoed the new post with a scarf and jived that wooden partner to spark and frenzy. The sweeping brush was a girl with beehive hair swept off her feet. And all the time my father kept vigil on his sagging seat by the fire, sucked on his unlit pipe, and observed his house driven mad by the water class. Who had made it big in America. Mary is going to continue with the dance motif.
And you can join in this one, I'm sure you know this. You can dance every dance with the guy who gives you the eye and holds you tight. You can smile every smile for the man who held your hand beneath the pale moonlight. But don't forget who's taking you home, and his arms are gonna be. So darling, say the last dance for me. Oh, I know that the music is fine, like sparkling wine. Go and have your fun. Laugh and sing, but while we're apart, don't give your heart to anyone. And don't forget who's taking you home, and his arms are gonna be. Oh, darling, say the last dance for me. Baby, don't you know I love you so? Can't you feel it when we touch? I will never, never let you go. I love you so much.
to wrap up the evening, I would like to ask two great supporters of Margaret's to give their, I suppose, response, their observations on the connection on the House Delirious. And I'm going to start with a very old friend of Margaret's, Joe O'Neill.
I'm really privileged to say that I've been a friend of Margaret's for about 55 years. And there are so many of our classmates here tonight, and I have to say that we're incredibly proud of her, and I am so proud on Sunday mornings when I hear her voice on Sunday Assembly. And I think we could all say, I see all my classmates, we always knew Margaret was different. We always knew she had a vision of life, and she made us, because of her insights, she made us howl with laughter, and I can remember the days we just gasped when she said something maybe ridiculous or incredible to a nun, and just waited for the reaction. And I think what Margaret has captured is, the child's vision of things, and it's our story. She tells my story, she tells the story of so many of us, and I know Margaret's here tonight, and we have a classmate who's very ill at the moment, so we brought the book to our bedside the other day, and we read from it, and we were back there, and the poems and the stories grabbed us by the throat. And I remember my friend Claire said to me, "Tell me what's in Margaret's book," and I said, she mentions, for instance, Jimmy Costigan, who was important in all our lives, and there are Costigans here, and she said, "I was an only child," she said, and I remember, no matter how many times I knocked on Costigan's door, Jimmy would answer and say, "Go up, Claire," and there could be 14 in the room. And I said, yeah, this is what Margaret's done. She's brought back our stories, and she saw the humanity in people, and she saw that even though what we thought were ordinary times, they were actually extraordinary. So I'm incredibly proud of Margaret, and I'm incredibly glad that we know her, and that she's from Cahir.
Thank you so much, Josephine. And I'd like to ask Annette to come up as well. Annette Condon to come up and say a few words as well, please, in response to Margaret's election.
Hi everyone. So I remember my brother coming home and he was doing his leaving cert, and he said Margaret Galvin is going to be a coach. Our heads all swiveled because back in, what year was it, 1976? It was like sort of saying, I'm going to be an astronaut and I'm going to go to the moon. And she did it. And I think, when I read Margaret's work, I'm transported back into the care of my childhood. I grew up in a public care, so I have my own host of wonderful characters as well. And as Margaret said, one of the functions of writing is to keep alive the memory of the people, the places, and the events that shaped us. And in recalling all these wonderful characters in Margaret's book, we pay homage to them from, we're adults now, we understand what they gave us, how they contributed, how they shaped our lives, and we pay honour to them. So, I think of, Johnny, the drunken, lonely roadman who instilled in Margaret a desire and a longing for education. I think of the men in Ned Ryan's pub, Cairns Carnegie Hall, who knew, who sang their songs and dreamed their dreams, and it was all observed by a little innocent child with big ears, as she said. And she, in her work, she preserves the innocence and the childlike wonder of it all, but in kind of gratitude as an adult in understanding it all. So they're Margaret's stories, but they're also our stories. They're what makes Cahir what it is. They represent our shared identity. They make us who we are. And I'm just proud to know her and that she's put Cahir on the map. So thank you.
essays, poems in this collection of Tipperary writers. And she says, you know, it was her first published work, and I can tell you, I'm packed to the devil. I'm not dying, I'm not going under bloody costumes and whatever you're doing to me until I'm here launching a book for you. And I am absolutely going to see it. Every time Annette shows me a piece of work that's you know, from her pub, I say, oh Jesus, why didn't I go to Collins? I should have gone down there rather than on this pub. But I really do mean that, and I have to reiterate again, and those of you who do use social media know what that woman has done for me. As Bridget says, we're coming to the end of the evening, and just a couple of people I do want to introduce. The book is dedicated to two very dear friends, to my very dear friend Margaret Galvin from Limerick. Shasu Salama. Traveller from our very early days as students. We were speaking together. We were speaking together. That's right, we shared accommodation in Cork, and God bless us, just a double bed, as Margaret says, long before. And I have such respect and such regard for the wonderful work you have done as a librarian in Limerick, and all the books you have written on local history and all the rest of it. And I really do want to honour your Lifetime Achievement Award. And a very dear friend to a lot of us also, to whom the book is dedicated, is Mary Gorman from Clonmel. Where's Mary? And you know, we would have known each other a very long time, and you know, fabulous, right? And I tell you something about this, when she was shortlisted in a competition this year called the Fish Tank, which, and cousins from Wexford won, and I wouldn't get within a NASA's roar of either of them, so watch this space. And finally, I want to thank my husband, Philip Quirk, my son, Ivar Quirk. Ivar is the patron saint of Wexford. It sounds very gallant, the name up here. It's a very common name where I come from. And, you know, I could not devote a huge amount of my time, as I do, obviously have to do, if I didn't live, as I always say, in a madhouse, if I didn't live in a house where that was seen as a legitimate business, and it should be better off now to be cleaning the windows, you know. And it's very funny, my husband is also a writer, a poet, and a neighbour said to me the other day, I say Philip gives you a great out hand with that old writing. So the implication was, of course, that, you know, sure, how could you be expected, like, you know. But because he's a dear and cherished neighbour, I just laughed at it. So not quite a hand with the old writing, but a super hand with proofreading. And as Jenny Cox knows, I'm capable of making the most woeful mistakes when I submit work that really does need a proofreader's eye. And to Ivar too, who inspires us all with his gentleness, and he's right on. Okay? We're going to finish a poem, it's on page 53. Sorry to be PJ, yeah. And it brings us, I suppose, neatly back to Jim Hayde in a way, because it was a letter that was delivered to us. And we're also going to finish on a note of what we term resilience and endurance, and you know, the important things to continue and keep on rocking, you know. And the last time we were here in 2019, we were honouring the wonderful Bertie Cashman, who was such an example to us all in this town, who made a fabulous life out of nothing, out of being a fantasy, you know, making a fantasy. He was a child labourer, working at 11 or 10 in the mart. But he made this really rich fantasy life for himself. He was a drover and a beef barn and all the rest of it. And he sadly got cancer and died very young. And again, coming back to our friend, the undertaker here, to Wally, who gave him this fabulous funeral, I can tell you, on this fabulous Bedford van. And all the rest of it. I went to, himself and Patty went to great trouble to make sure photographs were got to me and all the rest of it, so I could write about Murty. Murty's favourite song is one that I think is a great anthem for all of us. Hard times come again no more. So I'm going to end on that, but not before I introduce you to another bit of good fortune in the shape of my uncle, Billy Coughlin from Clonmore. All that family emigrated very young, they moved to England, but Billy somehow got to Canada. And he sent us just one letter. My God, what did that letter contain? Let's hear it. Uncle Billy's fortune. When Uncle Billy sent 500 quid from Canada, we nearly hung the Canadian flag from the window to salute the baby. We filled our heads with pine forests, great prairies full of sway wheat, Manitoba, Quebec, and Brunswick, place names tracked down in an atlas, became a litany of amazement recited by prayers or spells. Ontario was often in our conversation, the wonder of our Billy making a life there on the shores of some great unimaginable lake. Our Billy, who never came home, but sent this one short letter with a cheque describing how he had bettered himself. Lived in Bay and Gable House, terracotta brick, beside neighbours who were owed money. A photo of his wife and clothes showed he had married a tall, no-nonsense type with high teeth, a woman in a woolen coat dressed for the snow. His photo relieved an old man 60 years on another continent. Uncle Billy's money made our bedrooms blush, new paint and horror pink. Embossed wallpaper was an opulent grey under our fingertips. The suite of furniture bought for the front room was in shades of tawny and rust, flecked through with a colour we called maple, a detail about which we were all of us specific and insistent. We saw ourselves as kind of honorary Canadians who had to wave a flag. So we're going to finish this absolutely fabulous evening that is way beyond expectation, and I am so richly blessed by all of you and so grateful to all of you, and long may you all prosper and hard times come again.
Let us pause in life pleasures and count its many tears, while we all suck sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. All hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the wind. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. All hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, all hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. All hard times come again no more. There's a pale weeping maiden who tires life away, with a worn heart whose better days are o'er. Though her voice would be merry, 'tis sighing all the day. All hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. All hard times come again no more.
I just want to give one commercial announcement, okay? Anybody who has the nerve not to be here tonight, that you know about, right? The Junction Festival is about to start in Clonmel, and I really envy you all down here in South Tip when I look at the lineup of plays and readings and music and everything that will see South Tipperary for the next 2 weeks. And I will be doing a reading on the 7th of July, which is a Friday, in the main garden. Inside now, not out on the road, they assure me, at 1 o'clock. And then I know there's an event, Ian Atchison and Jenny of Right Minds in Clonmel have a spoken word event that evening. Is it 6 o'clock? It's some early time, Ian, isn't it? To be finished on the time for people who want to go to the play in the Dome. Okay, so look, if there is anybody, I do not want to come up on a bus. I don't drive. It's a horse, the journey to come up from Wexford on a bus, believe me, and find no one up there. And for some godforsaken reason, the gig didn't get into the brochure. It is on the website, but you know, if anybody wants to come and just make sure that I'm not hopping mad and appealing to invitation, please do. Main Guard, July 7th, Friday at 1 o'clock.
Okay.